boys from Temporal Investigations. Always on time.
Edith Keeler must die.
I could be destined to fall in love with that woman and become my own great-grandfather.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Temporal Investigations, my Star Trek podcast, talking about kind of all things Trek, new Trek, old Trek, the lore, the canon. And I'm really excited today because I have my first return guest. He didn't have a terrible experience, so that's always a positive. Mr. Benjamin Hunting, hello.
Hello. I'm still in the honeymoon phase of this podcast. So.
Yeah. Wait till I actually have a plan I kind of want to talk to you about after we get a few more of these in. No, I really want to play. I kind of want to do some kind of like gaming and stuff. And I bought the 50th anniversary Trivial Pursuit, and I want to get like a couple of my more knowledge intense friends around and play it on the podcast.
Is knowledge intense a different way of saying non-neurotypical?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And the new guest joining us today, he is the executive editor at a car magazine that uses an ampersand in its name. He grew up watching The Next Generation, which I think probably all of us did here at some point. But his favorite series is Lower Decks. I respect that. Though Captain Picard, William Riker, Commander William Riker, Mr. Jonathan Frakes, director extraordinaire, is his favorite character. Mr. Mike Austin, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me. You know, I just remembered I actually met Jonathan Frakes in the LAX baggage claim once, so that really locks it for me.
Nice.
I was coming home after.
He was gracious.
I came home after one LA show one year, and the flight back to Detroit I had LeVar Burton on the flight. So
was he flying the plane?
I felt better that he was on board, but he was not flying it.
I went to a comic convention one time with a friend, and my friend, the whole Next Generation crew was on stage, and my friend asked Frakes if it was true that he would have been fired had he not worn a girdle in season 2 of Next Generation, like from that point forward. And Marina Sirtis actually answered the question for him because she was so upset by it.
Right.
But she said that the people at Paramount had come to both her and Frakes and said that you both have really nice, really cushy jobs, and it would be a real shame if you lost those jobs because you didn't take care of yourselves. And I was like, wow, this is like a totally different era of just fat shaming people in the public eye as an executive. And so the answer was yes. He was threatened with, losing his job.
Maybe don't make them sit all the time. Like, sitting is not a flattering position for anybody.
Right.
Seriously.
That's how we end up with the Picard and the Picard maneuver.
But think of how awesome it would have been. But think of how awesome it would have been if Riker had embraced his bear persona like back then.
Yeah.
Like, he's so about it now, and everyone loves him for it. And on TV, it would have been inspiring, I think, to a lot of us.
I do love, I did mention that he's a director and has been directing for a while now. He's been doing a lot of new Trek episodes as well, and he just did the most recent Starfleet Academy. I like that the modern Trek is exposing us to all new writers and directors and different visions and trying things, whether it works or not. I appreciate them trying things. But you can always tell when Frakes directs the episode. Like, he understands Star Trek in the way that it should be filmed, in a way that I think nobody else probably alive really gets.
There's like a musk too that comes through the television, I find. When
yes.
It's like comforting, but also a little arousing.
Yeah. I have like complicated thoughts about the new Trek. I watched them all, but
sure.
when you see the Frakes credit, you're like, okay, this is going to be a good one. And
I remember.
And I do want to put out ahead of time that like I have watched, like I haven't watched all of DS9, but I've watched a lot of Star Trek. Like, it was definitely a huge part of my life, and even identity in my teens and early 20s. But I am not an encyclopedic like Trek knower. I cannot reference specific episodes. I want to get that out of the way. That if
that's
you're
why we
like,
have
this guy's
pointing the wrong way. That's why we have.
It's
chat.
going to depend.
If you're like, this guy's an idiot, you'd be like, he's not a real fan.
No.
It's fine.
And
if you wanted, if the listener's like, this guy's not a real fan, I understand it.
I don't think so because first off, I don't think that there's a real good definition of a real fan. Like, you enjoy watching it, you're a fan. You enjoy talking about it, you're a fan. One of the reasons, and I've actually, it's sort of kind of validated my reasoning for doing this, which I'm glad Ben kept pushing me to do it over when I kept telling him, I kind of want to do this. He's like, well, you should do it. When are you going to do it? My friends in this business that like Star Trek all have, obviously, a different perspective that they bring into it. And after recording these episodes, I like feel so good about the conversations and about what I've learned, because I've always learned, I've learned something new even after being a fan for, as long as I can remember. And that's such a cool experience to be able to talk to my friends who are all pretty smart about, this thing that, I wouldn't necessarily expect a bunch of car people to be talking about. So I don't think maybe after your take on Star Trek Picard, maybe people will say you're a bad fan. But
no, totally, I'm right with Mike on all of that.
I'm probably going to push back a little bit, but that's going to bring us to what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So, just to give the listeners a little bit of background, when I've been talking to people that I want to have on here, I want them to feel the most comfortable. So I kind of poke and prod and like, well, kind of like, what would you want to talk about? Do you got any takes on Star Trek that you could talk about? Not necessarily a hot take, but like something you could talk about for a while that you're really kind of passionate or enthusiastic about it. And we're kind of bouncing stuff back and forth. And Mike, I had sent some of some of the stuff you had said. I told Ben about, and it's like, yeah, we should talk about Star Trek Picard, because both of you were probably not fans of it. And I will say, I am going to have to play the role of somebody who liked it, but I did like a lot of it. I think there's some stuff that they definitely got wrong,
dude.
But
I liked a lot of it. I also disliked a lot of it. It had a lot of the like things I find annoying about the bad parts of New Trek.
Right.
So I guess I'm in the middle here.
Well, and we'll get into that. I just want to give a little bit of background for listeners in case it's been a hot minute since they watched it.
I had to read several synopses this afternoon, and like
I have one open.
Yeah, while I was reading them, I kept finding stuff that like I had forgotten was terrible, and I'm like, oh man, like there's even more bad stuff in this season than I thought.
So I remember, for some reason, I remember right where I was when I was talking to some other automotive journalists about Picard coming back, because my friend Wendy, who works now at Stellantis, is a sci-fi fan, and we were talking about Picard, and for some reason, we were in Morocco doing this. But I remember the conversation with a couple of other folks that was with us that was like, that Patrick Stewart had said, look, I'm going to do, it sounds like I'm going to do this Star Trek series. And Patrick Stewart had always said, he's like, I don't want to do it. The story is done. The Picard story is done.
He was so right.
What else is there to tell? And he had met with, and the story goes, he had met with Michael Chabon, who was the showrunner. And basically he went to say, look, basically to tell him no in person, because he felt like he owed that to the studio to go tell them to turn him down in person. And they chatted, and through that discussion, Patrick Stewart's like, oh, maybe I will do it. Now, I don't know if it was a dump truck full of money that changed his mind or whatever, but Chabon had to rewrite the first episode, and that kind of steered the way the show was going. But from most people's general understanding was they didn't want to just retell Next Gen. They just didn't want it to be an extension of that. They wanted to...
Well, they saved that for the third season.
They did, which would probably be the season that Patrick Stewart liked the least. Now, I haven't heard him talk about it, but that was the one that he really didn't want to do. He wanted to tell a story of an older Picard because he was older. And I like sort of some of the things that they did. The problem is Patrick Stewart's also not an action hero. He's never been an action hero. And they try to force this older gentleman into an action hero role in more than one of these seasons. And that definitely doesn't work.
It's the problem that they had with the Indiana Jones sequels of the last 15 years, where instead of showing us an older Jones doing cool stuff that an older person could do, they did exactly what you just said, where they're like, oh, we're going to put him on all those same adventures again and forget that he's probably breaking his hip every 15 steps. And it really didn't work for me story-wise. So I didn't believe any of it, and I wanted to see that more interesting, more nuanced story told from a perspective of someone who's different from the earlier movies. But I think the characterization is a huge problem in Picard across the board. And I think that part of it too is when they were doing the original series, Stewart was, as you mentioned, part of an ensemble cast. Now he's a huge star and an icon. And as a result, he has massive weight he can throw around in the story process. And so there's nothing to check his worst impulses about the character. And if he wants the character to suddenly be this, who's going to say no to him? They're going to do whatever the star of the show wants to do. So you end up with like a non-cohesive look at a character that's very familiar to audiences, but is no longer presented in a familiar way.
I think that, and I think we should break it down by like kind of key themes through the 3 seasons. The first season, like we'll just do a real quick recap. First season was the Borg, the Romulan Borg, kind of the Romulans using Borg technology kind of thing.
That's not all that happened. There was like a fake body, wasn't there? Mike, wasn't
there?
Didn't he steal Data's body?
Picard dies. Does he die in season 1 or season 2? I don't actually remember.
I think it's season 1.
He dies. He gets put back into another body.
He steals that body. It's not his body.
But Data, the thing that I want to come back to is they brought Data back to life just to kill him again.
Yes,
and that's not the only time they bring Data back to life. Season 2 was the time travel, not the time travel one, but the alternate kind of huge future that Q kind of sets into play. There's a lot that I like about that season. I don't like the Borg plot in that season, but I like a lot about that season. And then Picard works through his daddy issues. And whatever. And then season 3 is, I think, the most interesting one because it brings back a lot of these original cast characters. But it also explores like what happened between Beverly and Picard, and it turns out they had a kid.
Yeah, we get a fun young whippersnapper character. Everyone loves that when there's a new young character. Isn't that amazing when they do that? And give him an accent too.
But before we get into we'll get into it. I promise we'll get into it. I would like to say that I like a couple of things that I think were very smart that I think they maybe missed a little bit on. Which, if they wanted to bring back the Borg plot, that's fine. I think Voyager kind of overplayed the Borg, but the Borg, Picard's assimilation was never dealt with properly in The Next Generation.
They just put him back in charge of the Enterprise because literally weeks later.
Because it's because it's not serial television. It's episodic. So they couldn't. Like the 90s storytelling wouldn't allow that serialization to continue. So we don't really learn about any of Picard's post-traumatic stress until First Contact. And while that's an excellent movie, I would like to point out that Starfleet was right in not sending Picard to fight the Borg again.
Yeah, of course not. It's insane. He should not have been a captain ever again either. Like, this should just be done.
He should not. But he just rolls around in the mud with his brother for, an episode, and then everything's fine again. So he still doesn't deal with that post-traumatic stress. So in Picard, finally that catches up to him, which I think is good. I think having 7 of 9 there is excellent. I'm a big Jerry Ryan fan, but I think her character outside of Voyager is even better than what her Voyager character was. She was actually really well written in Voyager, I would argue. The cat suit was a Rick Berman thing. Don't really necessarily need that, but there's this in the season 1, I believe, of Picard. 7 and Picard share a line where 7 wants to know, does the voices ever go away in her head? And he says no. And the glance that they share with each other, it's a very powerful scene because it's those 2 people in the entire galaxy that share the same trauma. And
because they killed Hugh. Hugh had that trauma too.
They did, which was
dead now.
Yes, I know. We're getting to that. But I think that could have been, and to your point, I think that could have been a really interesting way to explore and explain a lot of things that had happened to Picard after Nemesis, which was a terrible movie.
I feel like I gotta take back saying that like it was a mistake to put Picard in charge after Best of Both Worlds, because we know that like if you're an older white man in a position of power and something bad happens, there's no consequences to that. So ultimately, it was a very realistic move on Starfleet's part that we shouldn't question whatsoever.
I was gonna say the things you point out are valid, especially like storytelling in 2026. Let's explore generational trauma, like strong thing that like all media does, and I like. And I think that was a good thing to address. But my initial reaction, it was always like the Borg is the lazy Star Trek crush. And
100%.
Voyager is set the mold here, where it's like, we don't have any ideas. We need to make sure people watch. We're just going to do Borg. And they did it in the movies too. And it's just like, I am so tired. Come up with new stuff. And we don't need to always do the Borg. That said, yeah, let's explore this, traumatic thing. And even like in season 3, like, let's explore the fact that you led a genocide against a third of the fleet. Okay. There's something there.
Yeah.
And the second laziest story crutch in Star Trek is Q. Because Q can do anything. Q. Yeah, as a personality, sure. But like as a plot device, when you put the second season of Picard takes the Borg and Q together, and it's like at that point, the Star Trek messed up with the Borg by creating an unstoppable enemy. When you have that, you have a huge story problem, and you can only deal with it in ways that aren't really going to work for the audience. So it's been like variations on what's not really going to work for the audience ever since we first saw the Borg. And when we get to Star Trek Picard season 2 and they bring Q in, it's like, okay, so whatever happens here, we can just wipe it away with the magic Q eraser. And that's probably why I dropped out of that season halfway through and never came back. I watched the other two in full, but the second season I could not deal with.
And then they do some timeline.
That was where I was at. I watched it, but I was like, oh wait, we're doing, you're going to go to modern day. Cause I don't know, maybe because you don't want to build sets. Like,
yeah, some budget thing.
Well, I mean, that's a Star Trek trope, right? Like, that's not necessarily unusual. There was some good ensemble characters, I think, in Picard, but I think that's overall, I liked the third season. I just rewatched most of it recently because I had it on while I was building the Enterprise D Lego model, and there's some fun stuff there.
I think you're just associating a fun activity with like this show that maybe wasn't as fun.
So fans were upset that Troy and Riker were not having the most perfect loving relationship in the history of ever, and it's like that's not surprising. Relationships in the future. I mean, relationships aren't always perfect. So why does theirs need to be perfect for so long?
How was Worf still single? That didn't feel realistic to me.
Worf. We learned in Starfleet Academy that Klingons have 4 testicles, and we learned in. Where are you going with this, Chad? I'm just saying. with two dongs and 4 testicles, he should be able to find himself a mate. That's all But Worf is this Zen character, like this Zen martial arts kind of whatever in season 3 of Picard. Like it's some of the story decisions I thought were weird. I liked seeing all the cast back. I kind of liked the idea of Picard having a son that Beverly didn't tell him about.
Absolutely not.
No, that was bad.
Terrible.
I especially season 3. I was like, give me the nostalgia. I am here for it. Just feed me the syrup. And like, I love Picard. I love the idea of like, he's at the family home. He has this, quiet life. He's sort of an intergalactic hero, but he's, no one cares about him anymore. I love, 7 of 9 has this different, interesting life that is shaped by who she is and who she's finding out who she wants to be. But yeah, and Troy and Riker, there's a bit of like, if you want to know the epilogue's not always going to be happy with everyone. The Worf one gets into the territory of like, come on, you guys are just trying to do stuff. Like, who in the writer's room is like, what if Worf was calm? It's like,
Right.
okay, maybe, but the execution was lacking.
And surprise son is like something that's already been done in Star Trek, I think to greater effect in the movies. So coming back to that was a little weird. It's like it's such a cheap way to make a character interrogate themselves about their life decisions by being like, "Oh, I suddenly have a son now, so I'm thinking about my legacy." It's like, come on, man! Like there are other ways that we can do this without just creating a character to do that.
The seasons were very, and then I do want to kind of follow a little bit more of like asking you both like what you really didn't like and kind of breaking that down. But I, I would say the one last thing though is the seasons were very disjointed. So this initial idea that Picard, what was making him reevaluate his life as an old man was how he let down the Romulans when he was supposed to be the one spearheading the evacuation of Romulus before the supernova that we learned about in the TOS or in the 2009 reboot movie, which actually happened in real time. So,
but wasn't that an alternate timeline though? Wasn't the Kelvin timeline
no,
a different timeline?
The supernova happened. It's the time travel back that split the multiverse.
All right, you lost me, but all right.
So it's time travel. You don't need, so that was supposed to be the way that Picard is kind of realizing, oh, he screwed up. He's not infallible. He's not this larger than life leader, because he failed and a lot of Romulans died.
I feel like we knew that about him though. I feel like in the seasons of Next Generation we saw him fail. I don't think he was presented as infallible.
No, but you guys have both mentioned that he was sort of like this, in some ways, this larger than life character. Is going to in retirement. I mean, Ben, you said something along that line there. And he's always had this reputation, even very early on in TNG, of being the greatest captain in Starfleet. Like when Commander Shelby, not Admiral Shelby, who gets shot, when she is confronting Riker in the Best of Both Worlds, she's like, "That's why you stay, following the coattails of a great man like Picard." And it's like, we're only 3 seasons in, and he hasn't done a lot of great stuff. He got his first starship blown up by the Ferengi. I was just thinking the other day, I don't think there's a single
let his best friend die.
Yeah, he let his best friend die. Yeah. There isn't a single
had a son he didn't know about.
Yeah. There isn't a combat situation that I think that he handled particularly well. He may be a good diplomat.
Hey, Picard maneuver, man. Come on. That was combat.
That's the only one that I can really think of. He didn't beat the Borg. Riker did. He didn't stop the Klingon Civil War. Data did on the Endeavor. When he fought the Borg again in First Contact. Yes, he was at that one time at the command of the Enterprise, but like the battle is sort of already kind of done kind of before then.
So is this turning into like a Picard diss track? Because it kind of feels that way.
I feel like I could have a separate episode about that, of just
I was just going to say, like, I think the interesting thing, the door that Picard the series opens is especially in TNG, but also in the movies, it's like he does mess up, or he is fallible, or he does have like earnest conversations, but he still has, whether it's like the 90s portrayal of masculinity or just the British stiff upper lip, he never really talks about his feelings. And now 20 years later we do that, and it's a cool place to go.
Which is so funny because they had a counselor on the bridge. Like the writers knew that in the future you would need this, and then didn't know what to do with it. Like,
well, they were pretty good in the show about like highlighting that Picard doesn't talk about his feelings. When they had like Captain Picard Day and stuff like that, where he was super uncomfortable around kids and like. Yeah.
I mean, the only time he really kind of seeks mental help is after he was tortured by the Cardassians. Like they kind of do that cutaway at the very end of that episode of Chain of Command, where he sits down to talk to Troy and says that he broke. He tells Troy that they broke him.
I mean, maybe it was all done off camera and it was like a confidentiality thing. We don't know what Starfleet's policies really are.
We don't. All right, so let's air our grievances. This is Festivus. Mike, things you absolutely did not like about Picard that maybe we haven't talked about.
Well, I was just saying in general, like my main
the series, I mean, not.
Yeah, I know. Like my two problems with New Trek are, I would just say, it's like, one, there's just like a lot of exposition, and Picard was better at this than Discovery, but it was like, where's the subtlety? And it had plenty of moments that weren't subtle, or you're just like, come on, they're doing this version. It just seemed like they could have done it a little, like they maybe took the easy route out in terms of like plot or dialogue, or just like super overt when they're like, you meet a new character and they have a beef. It's just like, I wanted it to be a little more subtle. And then the other thing, I'm forgetting while I talk, so my brain doesn't work while I talk. But
I forget while I talk too. It's great.
The other thing with Picard was, I think the disjointedness was a piece of it. But I think, I would say a lot of it was just like, you didn't have to go that obvious on a lot of the bits. Like, I get it that the captain in like season 3 like hates Picard. Like, you don't need to be like every single time.
It doesn't need to be his entire personality, right?
It was almost satire.
Yeah.
And then
he was right.
there was,
sure, but
all the jerk captains in Star Trek have all been right, which is kind of funny. Okay, go on.
And then
sorry,
they also like, there's this whole like the Data arc. Again, this was like a minor annoyance, but like, it was like, okay, he misses his friend. I get it. But I thought the show was about moving on. Like, and so we're spending a whole season not moving on. It's that sort of thing that was, again, like the intent, like I watched it, I'm in, I want to see where it turns out. Like the general idea was there, but like getting it all the way to the end didn't quite make it, or like mistakes were made along.
I mean, bringing Data back to life to kill him, and then to bring him back to life. I mean, I don't like the way he died in Nemesis. I don't, but I don't like a lot of things about Nemesis.
We could just pretend Nemesis didn't happen.
We could,
like that's how I live my life. That's my code.
But like we say goodbye, and then it's like, well, that death also wasn't a fitting send off, so we bring him back. Like, that drives me nuts. I do actually really like the captain in season 3 of Picard. And
that was my favorite season. It was the strongest one. Like I said, there were some minor annoyances. There was some, again, just like acknowledgement of like, I am just, they're just feeding me the stuff I want.
Right.
But
it was the most fan servicey of the seasons. Yeah,
it was. I was there for the fan service. But also, like, give me, like, just go, not to be all about Frakes, but like, Frakes just like eats up the scenery anytime he shows up now. So it's like, give me this guy who's like, loving playing the character and gives me the fan service, and we learn some new things about him. And then they also talk about their feelings.
I mean, the one thing that I hate about, the only one thing I absolutely did not like about Captain Shaw, which was Todd Stashwick, who's a fantastic actor, was he was dead naming 7 of 9 at the beginning. I understand why, and they explain that, he hates the Borg. It's still dead naming in 2023. Like, it's not cool. But what I really liked about Shaw's character was not only kind of the arc that he went through, but when they're in the holodeck and he's explaining, he finally confronts Picard about it. Picard responds the same way that Picard responded when Ben Sisko confronted him in the first episode of Deep Space Nine, because he just doesn't know how to handle it. He does not know how to handle people that he affected by being Locutus. And when Shaw, the character, is telling the story about at Wolf 359, like the sound design, like the background music and stuff drops, and you just start to hear these voices and screaming and explosions. And he talks about when he talks about how he was picked to go onto a shuttle randomly by some lieutenant who didn't even save a seat for herself, and he had real survivor's guilt. He's just this from Chicago, is his quote. And that's such a. I actually on social media reached out to Stashwick and said I thought that was a really powerful scene, and I got a like on it, which was cool. But I think that was a real good bit of storytelling addressing the Borg that is not the crutch that Voyager used. Voyager used it as a crutch. I think the Borg could have been much better if they would have leaned more into all of that trauma that happens and the ramifications of that, and it just ended up being this crutch. I completely agree with you on that. Ben, what else about Picard were you?
So
I want to cut it, but I want to just before we leave it. You mentioned the dead naming, and I was thinking that Picard of Discovery being by far the gayest Star Trek ever made. And then I was well, Picard is fairly straight, even though Star Trek has always had this sort of a pretty the concept of gender fluidity has been existing in Star Trek going back to the original series.
Riker is not a straight character,
but now,
no.
But when you consider Worf and his very interesting anatomy, then maybe Picard does move up on the Star Trek gayness ranking.
I just had Mike. I just recorded this yesterday as we're recording, but it'll be out before people are listening to this. I talked to Aaron at Jalopnik on the show, and we talked about the horniness of Star Trek and the characters and the fan fiction and all of the queer focused and queer coded characters. And
actually, I should say queer instead of gay.
Yeah,
to that point.
Discovery is very queer coded. Starfleet Academy is very queer coded, and that's great. I've always had, and I was telling her, I've always had representation in Star Trek. I've always kind of been drawn to the captain, but the captains outside of, especially early on, were white dudes. I could very easily see myself in that, right? I'm excited for people now who can find characters that they can identify with in Star Trek, because I want more people to enjoy the experience and the lore. And and I think that's why I'm extra frustrated about the dead naming of Seven. I know, yes, it just didn't feel right. Her name is 7 of 9. It's how
they played it a little strong. There is some way to establish this character as a jerk, and then later he comes around or gains greater understanding. But they went really hard at the beginning,
really early on the Annika, and it's guys. And then eventually he does say when he dies, he's you have the bridge, 7 of 9. So it
I'm glad she was able to facilitate his transition from jerk to redeemed jerk. That's
right.
I'm glad she was alive for that purpose and written into the script for that reason. That's great.
But we do even learn in Picard that 7 of 9 is queer. So she goes from being this cat-suited Rick Berman sex appeal to, not something.
I
that
think
Rick Berman
any
probably wouldn't
robot
like at all.
Any robot is by definition queer. There's no robots do not have a gender preference or identity, or they can. It's the world is
a cyborg.
But the world is their oyster, is what I'm saying. You're not in a box when you're a robot. You get to experience life's rainbow. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So, anyways, I do want to basically to finish. I want to talk about what we would have done differently. But Ben, were there any other grievances you wanted to air about?
I mean, the stuff you guys are talking about, I had also forgotten about in season 3. I forgot that the Borg were involved. I forgot about Data coming back again, and lore and stuff.
Well, we don't really learn the Borg are involved. We learned that there are changelings involved very early on, but for some reason the changelings partnered up with the Borg. But we see the Borg Queen, and it's Elisa Kriege who plays the Queen, who was the original Queen.
I think Borg Queen was one of the dumbest ideas in all of Star Trek, because you had this really cool idea of a collective identity, and then they're like, well, how do we make that into something that Picard can fight one-on-one or that Data can have sex with? And it wasn't possible. So they created this queen that suddenly controls everything, and it doesn't that defeat the purpose of a collective? It just seemed odd to me.
But if you're following a beehive has a queen.
Yeah, but they're Borg. They're not bees. That's what made them cool. Anyway, I think I'm Borged out. I just don't need to see the Borg anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a big universe and there's lots of cool stuff that they can do. Like this afternoon, I reread a synopsis of season 1, and as I mentioned, and it reminded me of all this stuff in the show that I had forgotten about that was like semi-infuriating. I think the Romulan supernova was dumb. I think Picard having Picard fail in this massive way and become like a pariah within Starfleet was a dumb idea.
Well, he wasn't a pariah within Starfleet, but he was a pariah to the Romulans.
Well, but within Starfleet, like he was forced to resign and all this stuff. And I just think there's other ways you can explore what they wanted to explore without like the universe being involved in such a massive way. The synth attack was dumb.
The synth attack was dumb. Yes.
It's again, it's like, Mike, you were talking about how there's so much exposition in this show and they had so few episodes. And so to tackle these like giant concepts in like a tiny number of episodes gives us this just constant information dump of what's going on. And I don't think it needed to be that massive, but there's smaller stuff too. Like in the first season, Girardi just like straight up kills someone. And then they're okay with her. Like after that, they're like, yeah, it's fine that you murdered this dude. We're still going to be friends. And like ethically that was okay because murder is fine, I guess. I don't know why we're not going to talk about it anymore. It was just really weird. And then Picard is suddenly immortal and we never talk about that again when he gets his synthetic body.
But he's not immortal.
Why isn't it immortal?
They explained that the body was programmed to basically last an X amount of years and then simulate death. So he will die.
Simulate death is not dying.
Well,
first
that's
of all,
still like that's like Blade Runner epilogues.
Yeah. And like if you can program something to do one thing, you can program it to do another thing. Like you could change that program, right?
Sure.
And then
Data... we had to have that cybernetic tie-in because we had to have Brent Spiner playing another Soong.
Well, that's where I was going with like the idea that Data decides to give up his chance at coming back so that Picard can like have arthritis for another 25 years. Like it seems very odd. Mike was right, very disjointed. Or you were sorry, I think Chad, you were the one who was saying that.
I think we're all agreeing.
But it's like, what are all these elements? None of this is what interests what I find interesting in Star Trek. I think that's what it came down to in Picard. It was, we're going back to familiar characters. We're giving them dramatically different motivations and changing who they are as characters. Like there were things that Picard was doing, and you talked about him being an action star all of a sudden, or just the idea of this like failed man is a very different presentation of the character. It's not what I want to see. You know, like I didn't find it compelling, and I don't understand why we had to go back and tell these stories other than, you know, they threw a bunch of money at Stewart and he's like, well, okay, I mean, I'll do it if I have reasonable amount of creative controls. I should have been the target audience for this series. You know, there's nothing. And I find Strange New Worlds is like 200,000 times more interesting than Picard ever was at its most interesting. You know, and the third season, pulling a Battlestar Galactica by having the old Enterprise be the only one that's not connected to this new system. You know, it's like, or even worse than that, it's like that, remember the Terminator sequel where everyone was super excited about that operating system they were all going to get? Yeah. And it turns out the operating system was Skynet by a different name. Well, they're doing that here too. It's just, these are tired concepts that have been explored in so many other properties.
You have to admit, though, that when the Bay 10 doors of Space Dock opened and you saw the Enterprise sitting there, you had a moment. Come on, you did. And when they walk onto the bridge and the bridge lights up and you hear Majel Barrett's voice as the computer, you got to be a little nostalgic. I mean, right? Like
this is what season 3 did well. Was like, if we're gonna do those things, if we're gonna look at the characters, or we're gonna change and we're gonna explore them, it's like we're still here because we believe in this person or these people, and like give me the like triumphant crescendo at the end, you know, that like gets me a little wispy eyed to be like, oh yeah, they found themselves again. That's what season 3 did really well.
Yes.
And yes, I did forget the annoyance of like all the computers are connected, and like they definitely would do this without any safeguards or like other backups. That's the thing that it's sort of like we're in the future and we like presumably don't use natural gas or other combustibles, but like anytime there's an explosion, there's always an active fire that's just
there's like a scary
to go.
coolant of some kind that like instantly catches
Yeah, it's
fire.
like, the coolant's flammable. We haven't figured that out.
I feel like burns are like the number one Star Trek injury on a starship. Whenever you're in like the medical bays, it's always like horribly burned bodies and like people.
And it's probably the easiest to do makeup for. I mean,
I guess that's true, and you don't want to see people with like severed limbs. I guess I don't know
No.
Look, some of that stuff's gonna catch on fire, and like having some spark shower, I understand. And like you can't have a thing like on fire and then burn out or get bigger because of continuity. But it's that sort of thing where I'm like, I mean, that's a minor one, and I'm willing to accept the suspension of disbelief. But a lot of the show is just like, who would do this? No one would do it that way.
I mean, the connected computer stuff it was a MacGuffin that didn't make any sense. Like, it just didn't. And
changelings are another problem. Like, if you're going to have shapeshifters and stuff, I mean, that's a third cop-out from a plot thing. Like, if you can have a character that looks like any other character and you can't tell and there's no way to deal with it, it's like you've written yourself into a terrible corner at that point.
Yeah, which Deep Space Nine, I know Mikey didn't see all of it, but I thought Deep Space Nine handled it pretty well. It should have been one or the other. It should have been either the Borg or changelings. It should not have been this rogue changeling faction working with the Borg Queen. And it makes sense the Borg Queen is angry, and it makes sense that she's basically horribly disformed and dying, because the last time we saw the Borg Queen, Captain Janeway, well, Admiral Janeway technically, her up. Like, I mean, there is at the season finale or series finale of Voyager, left her in a bad state, and clearly she was never able to recover from that. And I think of all the things that they don't explain, or that they do explain in exposition, they don't touch on that at all. So if you hadn't seen the series finale of Voyager, you have no idea why the Borg Queen is battered and broken the way that
I haven't seen the series finale of Voyager. So.
Yeah, so you wouldn't know unless you read it somewhere. So I feel like, again, of all of the exposition and all of the explaining, they don't mention it at all.
I have a question about the idea of like a Starfleet museum. Now, how do you get there, and like how big is it? Because these ships are pretty big, and why would you go there? Like, is it just like, it can't just be school kids? Like, it seems odd.
I think it's the Starfleet version of the Udvar Hazy Museum.
But like
the Smithsonian was all
so far away.
Well, only because we don't have faster than light travel. If you have faster than light travel, it's not that far away. It's like going
depends
to DC
where you are. I mean, the universe is big, man. Like,
I mean, but it does kind of make sense that Geordi is just this, dad who spends his weekends tinkering away at his old car that he's trying to get working. It's just the old car as the Enterprise. I kind of felt like that worked. And I liked that LeVar Burton could act with his daughter as well, because one of his real daughter played one of his character's daughters, which I thought was a great moment. Okay. All right. So well, I don't want to be I definitely don't want to be one of those podcasts that just hates and stuff to hate it for clicks. There's a lot of that going on right now. What would, if you were Michael Chabon and you were doing Picard, and you can't say no, you wouldn't have done it, Ben. I know you're saying just let the story die.
No, I didn't. You're putting words in my mouth.
What would you do different? How would you, or what story would you tell? Is there any loose ends you'd like to see closed? Like, what would you do to tell a modern Picard story?
I mean, never give away your story ideas on a podcast. First lesson of podcasts.
I think Patrick Stewart's a little too old now to be doing a new Picard series.
I think that it was a missed opportunity to not do a Riker series as a sequel and have him on a ship actively doing stuff like they used to do on the Enterprise, because that was like a natural extension of that crew. And you could have Picard be involved in the show as kind of someone he goes to for guidance, or someone who's either maybe retired or maybe still in Starfleet. But I find that Star Trek really suffers when they have to wait for the action to come to them, or you rely on something that happened in the past to drive the story. Or Star Trek doesn't typically do worlds outside of Starfleet very well. They haven't really mastered the idea of what a non-Federation planet looks like. It all kind of ends up looking like the Mos Eisley Cantina with like a higher budget. And I feel that,
and it Quarks.
Yeah, you can avoid a lot of this. I just think that there were other vital characters from that cast. Frakes is probably too busy, and why would he want to return to episodic television in front of the camera like that on a regular basis? I get it. I just don't know if this. I mean, you predict I was going to say this. I don't know if this particular story needed to be told. I don't think we needed him like hiring a ship and going off like a buccaneer. Right. That seems a little bit weird. Like the most buccaneer Star Trek captain of all time was Kirk, and he only did that once to go get Spock's body. Like that was the whole reason. He never.
Well, the whole point of TNG was that we don't have the buccaneer. That Riker's the buccaneer, and Picard's
and he's kept in check, right? Like
right.
So. To throw that away, it's like, again, I mentioned earlier, the characterization was really off for a lot of this show. And it's like, these aren't the characters we remember, and there's no bridge between who they were and who they are now that really makes sense.
You do have to make a bit of a leap, though I don't think the leap was, especially for the third season, I don't think the leap was that far. The other two seasons, maybe a little bit more so. I will say that, and this isn't a Picard criticism, it's just a Star Trek criticism. Nothing happens after Deep Space Nine. And you can't go back and have Jonathan Frakes play Captain Riker on the Titan in live action. Do an animation, which they did in Lower Decks, which I think is the closest probably we're going to get to something told in that, with those characters anyway, in that time period. But like the lost era between the movies and TNG, this is also now kind of another lost era that we're only real recently getting to kind of explore again a little bit with Lower Decks, and then episode 5 of Starfleet Academy
what about
directly addresses what happens to Cisco.
What about the lost era between the original series and Star Trek the Motion Picture, when DeForest Kelley grew that beard?
Yeah.
And like, what's the story behind that beard? Like,
I mean, they could have done that in Discovery if they hadn't done the time jump.
100%. I mean, that's a missed opportunity.
So, I mean, this isn't spoilers, but because they're already done filming all of Strange New Worlds, but they did cast a McCoy, and he will be in at least the final episode.
Total spoiler. Right? Now I don't need to watch. Thank you, Chad.
You know the series is going to end with Captain Kirk on the bridge. So it's of the Enterprise. Like, that's pretty much established from episode 1.
I know we're talking about Picard, but man, the Kirk casting is like so good. I like Paul Wesley. I know some people who don't like his role as Kirk. It's so good that I got mad when they had that like thing that was making fun of old Kirk. Movie within a movie.
Yeah, when they do the holodeck stuff,
they're doing it dirty.
Yeah, I thought I like Paul Wesley. I like. There's a lot of stuff I like about Strange New Worlds.
But now I'm upset that they leaned on doing a holodeck episode. Anyway, let's get back to Picard.
Because they have so few episodes, right? And that's what they choose. That's the thing.
This is a bit aside, but I wanted, just before I forget, I read on Blue Sky, and this sort of hit home for me. It was an opinion that the problem with New Trek is that it's a bunch of writers raised on Star Trek, whereas older Star Treks was you're just getting good sci-fi writers and they're exploring new ideas,
or not even sci-fi.
A lot of New Trek is just exploring Star Trek.
That's a good point.
I think there's some validity to that.
Double-edged sword, though, because I can see where new, fresh ideas make sense, but I can also see when you have a writer's room full of people who understand Star Trek. Like, I don't think anybody that's just a fan of Star Trek can go out and write for Star Trek. Like, I don't think I could be a Star Trek writer. Like, we're gonna speculate what we would do if we were.
You could be an X-Files writer, though, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. But like, I keep going back to Tawny Newsome, who played Beckett Mariner and who's one of the writers of Starfleet Academy. Like,
amazing.
She and again, the Starfleet Academy episode with that deals with Cisco is basically her love letter to the character that got her into Star Trek, and her knowledge of Star Trek is combined with her ability to write good Star Trek, or to write good science fiction. I think if you can get both, the Star Trek fan who can also be a good writer,
I will undermine my entire argument, which is like Lower Decks is full of in-jokes and references, but it's also good
Yeah,
it's
Star
good
Trek.
TV in its own little encapsulated episode.
If you don't get the jokes, it's fine. It's still.
And I think to Mike's point, like the idea that the series have shifted away from an episodic format to an overarching story format, it kind of, I think, excludes some of the non-Star Trek fans from participating, because you're operating within this very specific canon that you suddenly have to be very familiar with, because everything is building for the entire season. Whereas you can't just write, I mean, unless you feel like writing a holodeck episode, apparently you can't just write a one-off episode and have it be cool and fun and interesting.
Yeah. So, Discovery started with a 15 episode season. They were still there were a bunch of problems with that first season of Discovery production wise that ended up just being this kind of mismatched whatever. So it didn't feel like it worked. So they cut the episode numbers down for after that. But I would argue that now that they've kind of got their footing, especially with Lower Deck, Strange New Worlds, and I would argue Starfleet Academy, they can, now 10 episodes isn't enough.
It's horrendously expensive though.
I know,
it's like 3 or 4x what TNG cost.
Yeah,
even if you adjust the dollars.
But you don't get this opportunity. I mean, Mike, I wanted to say to one of your really early points was like, oh, it's very exposition heavy. Picard is, because you can't tell, because
Picard less than Discovery, but yeah,
but you kind of have to force feed it a little bit because you've only got 10 episodes, so you can't draw. Now these episodes can be as long or as short as you want, and I think that Discovery had some 30-minute episodes that should have been longer, but like you don't have enough time. And when you look at Picard and some of the episodes they do, it's like, why are you doing this? You've got 10 episodes. What is going on here?
And they also brought in so many characters they didn't need to bring in.
I was just about to say that. It's like, there's a problem with modern TV is it's hard. No one's getting 26 episodes. So you kind of, if you can encapsulate it into an arc, great. And I think the thing with Picard was it has so much out there, and there was so many characters, new and old, that it just kind of tried to do too much. So I'm not going to give away my story like Ben did, but I would say, like, try to stick to one or two things, right? So it's like, are we exploring his guilt about Romulus? Then let's just do that. Or like, are we exploring that he misses his dead friend? Let's just do that. Like, I think a good example would be Loki, where it was like, Loki didn't really address the broader Marvel universe, and the other Marvel movies that don't wrap in the bigger universe, sometimes they have a problem with it. Loki didn't, because it was in this alternate location and this alternate thing. And it really just explored, who is Loki? Is he a bad guy or a good guy? And how does he feel about himself? And it took two seasons and a lot of episodes, but it still was essentially telling a very small story. And I think that's the key, is you have to tell a small story.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, just really quick, but I think that you have Discovery really was trying to figure stuff out. Plus they had some production issues. Picard, they were still trying to get their sea legs, but you look, especially the more recent seasons of Strange New Worlds, like, they've got it. They've figured it out. So I would bet, not a lot of money, but I'd bet some money if they could retell the Picard story themselves, they probably would do it a little bit differently. Just because they better understand that format. But it was just too many characters. It was dumping them in each time and trying to cover too much ground. They were trying to fill in this 20 or 30 years between the end of Nemesis and now, and they wanted to tell a bunch of stuff really quick, and I don't think that works. I think the supernova thing was dumb. I understand why they did it, because the 2009 movie kind of forced their hand in the timing of that. I think it's kind of interesting if they would have told that story a little bit better. I like the idea of revisiting Borg trauma, especially with characters like Hugh in 7 of 9.
Hugh was cool, but like we get him for like what, a handful of episodes, and he's just jettisoned. See, that's the other. So speaking of jettisoning characters, I think that Star Trek Next Generation has a problem that none of the other Star Treks have had, and it's a data problem. The fact is, they killed the most popular character on the show, and then they didn't, unlike the original series, when they did that and they realized this was a problem and people wanted Spock back, and they brought Spock back, and then they didn't mess with it. They weren't like, okay, you're back, you're dead, you're back, you're dead, you're back, you're dead. They were like, no, he's back and everything's fine and everyone loves him. It's like, in Next Generation, they killed the most popular character, didn't seem to realize they did that. And then we get Star Trek Picard. Like, why don't we get Star Trek Data? I know why. Because you created a character who can't age, which is another problem you have for a quote unquote legacy series. It's like they've shot themselves in the foot so many times with Data. Killing him, the aging thing, the fact that suddenly he has emotions, which is not something anyone was interested in except perhaps Spiner, who was like tired of playing the same character over and over. You know, and I think that really was to the detriment of that property.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah, now I mean, yeah. Speaking of revisiting trauma, now I'm remembering how annoyed I was when in the was it First Contact, where it was just like, Data has feelings.
He's afraid.
Oh yeah, but I like the emotion ship thing in Generations. I like the scene where he drinks the alcohol he doesn't like, and he's like, "Oh, I hate this. More, please." Like, there's some good.
Yes, but like every other character has emotions. Like the whole thing with Data was he's the sounding board on which our humanity is projected, or our alienicity, whatever we want to call it, and then it's reflected back on us, and we realize, oh, we're terrible people.
TOS.
I'm sorry.
That was Spock and TOS.
Exactly, but Spock was also flawed, quote unquote, flawed in the eyes of his own culture, right? So he was
of course,
an outsider who was an outsider everywhere. He couldn't be at home on Vulcan. He couldn't be at home on the Enterprise until he came to terms with that.
But that's why the modern exploration of Spock works. Aside from my current beef with Strange New Worlds, which is just like, I don't need a whole show. I don't need Spock soap opera.
I like sexy Spock. I'm into that.
I like sexy Spock. I'm just like, can we take a little break from Spock dating soap opera and get back to
if he wasn't so hot, space? Mike, maybe we could.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I mean,
okay, he's a smoke show. I'll give you that.
I mean, Ethan Peck is an attractive man. Actually, that entire cast I was talking to Aaron.
Yeah, and Chapel. Yeah, my heart beats still.
Jess
great.
Bush, man. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're just gonna go off the rails here because that whole. And I'm thinking about it, is like, no, everyone on that cast,
every single member of that cast is unreasonably attractive. Every single member.
Yeah, I mean,
in all distinct and amazing ways.
Yeah, and all extremely talented too. Like it's good. It's well written. It's well directed. It's Is there? Let's assume that Picard didn't exist.
Way ahead of you.
I might rewatch it now. I'm like thinking back to the parts I liked.
See, was there anything? I guess, Ben, for you, like, is there anything that you wish that Star Trek would have done with that character?
The character
with Picard, like, or do you think that because Nemesis was a bad movie?
Yeah,
and it ends in this kind of weird place because Riker's going to go off and do his own thing. But do you think the Jean-Luc Picard story really ended there?
I don't think he's the most compelling member of that cast. And not a knock on the character or on the actor. I think that it was a compelling ensemble, and I feel that like I don't know who was asking for a focus specifically on one character, and then to drill down even further, I don't know who was asking for a focus on Picard. You know, like it just doesn't. The show was not like that in a lot of ways. He was the focal point because but he was the focal point because he was the captain.
Yeah,
but it wasn't like every show was about him. In fact, I would think even the majority of shows were not about him.
No,
so to change that, it's like I didn't need it. Like I would have welcomed another return to see everybody, but I don't know realistically how you write that story, especially when you have like Warrior Monk Worf. Like it's
sure, yeah. Mike, is there anything that you like kind of wish that you still knew about Picard, or wish they would have maybe closed the book on?
I mean, I think they should have shipped him with Laris. I'm upset about that.
Yeah,
she's the person in the first season who's living with him.
Yeah,
yeah, of course, 100%. Like,
and she they totally have a thing that they're like kind of in denial about. And they just like let it go. And then it's honestly, like now Beverly's back in the picture. Come on.
No, thank you. I would say that she was the only new character who was introduced across all 3 seasons that I liked. She just seemed interesting, and like she seemed like Picard's equal in a way that few other characters did.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see. I want to see him like being challenged by somebody.
And the way that they wrote her too was obviously she brought these 2 Romulans in again because of his guilt on what happened, and something that we didn't really get to see a lot of, which was of course the supernova and the evacuation. but she also knew that, and the way that she played off of Picard with that, I felt was like very like she cared. I mean, she genuinely cared about him. I think he cared about her as well. But um, the the way that she was written to be that sort of equal, I thought was very was smart. I liked what they did with it, and then she ended up being one of those traveler type whatever people things that Will Wheaton ended up going off and doing.
Wait, what? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, oh, it's whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. I did like her as a character a lot.
I want to make sure we're talking about the same person now.
It was played by the same actor.
No, we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's complicated. It's complicated.
I would say now that we're here and pretending that we're, we could be showrunners, or that we have the capabilities that these professionals who are very good at their job did, but didn't do to absolute perfection. I want to point out the hypocrisy as on a panel here with people that all deal in creative endeavors, and how it's hard, and it's. If you're good, you're never satisfied with yourself and all of that stuff. I think maybe as we're talking through this, that the thing that they could have done and the thing they still could do is, especially and still hit fan service, is do like a Star Trek Visions thing. Just do 8 episodes in the Star Trek universe, pull anywhere in the timeline you want, pull the cast members in that you want, tell new stories, revisit characters, but tell new stories, explore new places. That would have been a cool way to do it.
Anthologize it, you mean?
Yes, an anthology, yeah.
But a lot of single capsule episodes. What are Riker and Troy up to?
I'm into that.
Yeah.
Picard, I don't know if you could do it in an hour. That would be the other challenge, but I think that would have been, then you could visit Picard a couple times. And then again, not to give too much to Star Wars Visions, but you can, because now I watch it, I'm like, I don't remember the first 2 of this one. That was 5 years ago, but you could revisit some of those timelines again. Or actually, no, Marvel does it with What If. I'm like,
yeah, they did with What Ifs. Yeah, I think that I do think, even though it was very overloaded with characters, I think there's some characters on Picard that I'd like to see more of. I really like Santiago Cabrera as Chris Rios, as Captain Rios. I like that he liked real cigars. I like he didn't like replicated food. I like the quirkiness to it. He's quirky. I like it.
He felt kind of like a stock character, though. It's like here's the Han Solo who's not Han Solo.
He came into it.
He went right away. Yeah, sure, Han Solo. But I think he grew into something, a little bit better. Michelle Hurd as Musiker as Raffi.
My least favorite character.
Oh,
of the
really?
Entire thing. Yeah, I felt that she existed exclusively to be tortured by the writers.
So she's Miles O'Brien.
Kind of, except more emotionally. Miles was physically tortured and put into weird situations, but she was like, "You will never have peace, Raffi. Every part of your past is traumatic, and no matter what you do, you will never overcome yourself." And I'm like, wow, this is really harsh.
We were talking about Laris, who's played by Aurora Bradley. I
wanted to mention about Laris. I would love a Laris spinoff because I have a thing for characters who have she was in the Tal Shiar, right? But now she's a cook and she's still doing that. I love characters who have found peace at something that is the total opposite of how they live the rest of their lives, whether they're in retirement. Yeah, they're in retirement, they're doing something else and they've moved on. And I think that's a very compelling storytelling device. Because you can dip into the past whenever you're something happens, she does something amazing, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I was in the Tal Shiar," and you're like, "Oh, you're not just a cook," and then we forget, and then we come back to it.
And you can use that as a foil for the character that's in the process of finding that.
Yeah,
piece.
Totally.
Todd Stashwick again as Liam Shaw. I liked the character a lot, other than the one thing obviously we talked about. But then I think there were some things that were kind of missed, like Vadic in season 3. Played by Amanda Plummer, the daughter of Christopher Plummer, which I thought was great, but I don't really think that her character, I liked her, but I didn't. It was just so disjointed with how is this part of the Changeling plot, but then this is a Borg plot. It's just.
She was kind of a superhero too, right? From what I remember.
She was the captain of the Shrike. She was the one.
Yeah, but just in terms of her plot, her place in the plot was she was in control of the Grand Conspiracy, correct?
Yeah, she was. Well, she thought she was.
Yeah.
Because when really the Borg Queen was. But
of course, I mean, always the Borg Queen.
Of course.
It all comes back to the Borg Queen. And Data being fully functional.
And Data being fully functional. Which I don't get the mixing of the holodeck characters into this now Data that's really just Brent Spiner. I don't get how a Data with emotions would be picked up by a Betazoid. I don't, because I don't know how computer generated emotions work. Like, there's a lot of things.
Can you imagine how annoying that would be if Betazoids like could pick up computer emotions? Because they're surrounded by computers all the time. Like, it would just be a constant barrage of, I don't know, boredom or terror or whatever computers are feeling.
That's still one of the best of many good lines in Lower Decks. Where it's like, we're in the movie. You can change the transporter rules anytime.
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah. So just because we don't want to, we could talk about this forever. But I mean, Picard. I mean, is it the worst Star Trek you've ever seen? I don't think so.
No way.
No. The animated series exists.
Well into the mid.
But I think that I think it could have been better. I don't know, how much sort of creative control Patrick Stewart had. He definitely had some. But I think, Ben, you made a really good point, which is Star Trek's all about the ensemble. And when you have one character kind of take over as the dominant, I don't think that works as Star Trek. Or work as well. So I definitely think you're onto something there. I will say that the very, very ending, they're obviously setting up for hopefully maybe another Star Trek series. I like the idea that 7 of 9 is captain of a starship. I think that closes, even if we don't see more of her character, I think that closes her arc from when she was rescued by Janeway and what Janeway had wanted for her. I think that's a very good way to end that. I really hate that they set up this big thing at the end and talking about naming and how the importance of legacy and stuff like that. And then they named the ship the Enterprise. Like, it really should have been.
I forgot about that too.
It should have been the Starship Picard. Because if you're watching.
Whoa.
Yes, it should have been. It should have been the Jean-Luc Picard because.
It should have been named after his brother.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, Starfleet hates Picard. They gotta they'll give him a Picard ship.
Yeah, they liked him by the end of that, but they do this whole build up and they talk about naming and how important that is, and you're starting to tear up just a little bit. Like, it's a little dusty in the room because you're like, oh, they're gonna do a ship reveal, and you're like, and then they set it up and then they fake it with just being the Enterprise, and it's like, no, I think the Enterprise is his own character, and
but they could have named it the Data and then instantly destroyed it. Like, we didn't, at least that didn't happen, right?
Right. So, to be continued, I guess we'll say. I think we pretty much set this here, but I think there's a lot more that we could still even talk about in terms of these characters, these iconic characters. I think that we all, grew up with them. Mike, you were saying pre-show that we were, kind of the first Star Trek you're exposed to. Like, it's probably my comfort Trek. Like, my favorite's Deep Space Nine, but the first Trek you're kind of really exposed to, I think, is what you gravitate to. I think there were some solid wins, but I also think there's some things they could have done better. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is just out of guilt, but like, I would say, like, even when Picard was on, I was like, you know what? I'm going to patronize all Trek because having Trek is a good thing, and I'm not going to like it all.
Not having Trek.
And some of it's not for me. That's another thing to, so
thank you, Mike. Thank you. That's what I've been trying. That's what I've been trying to say for so long.
To continue that thought. So, like, I completely agree, and that's why I don't watch. So I'm not watching Starfleet Academy because I don't think I'll like it. But I'm happy it exists. I'm not upset at it. But I think Picard was intended to be for us, and that's the problem. Like, it was aimed directly at us.
Right. Yeah. Star Trek.
But anyway, I'm glad they made it.
Yeah.
Even though I've just spent an hour picking it apart.
Well, we criticize what we love. We criticize the things we love, right? If we weren't fans, why would we come on a podcast and talk about it? So there you go. Ben, we'll start with you. Where can people? What do you? Any work? Want to pump anything? Want to plug anything? Anything?
Sure. There's a new issue of Dead Air coming out. My comic book about a world where one day out of the year you can talk to the dead, and as a result, a woman who has some trauma in her past tries to talk to someone to apologize for what happened and realizes that her friend maybe didn't die after all. And she gets together her group of 90s college DJ friends to figure out what happened with that trauma. You can find it at deadaircomic.com. It's probably going to be hitting Kickstarter at the end of April. And you can find all my other comic book stuff and car writing stuff at benjaminhunting.com. And if you want to hear my voice talk about cars and stuff, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. We're at episode 450. So there's a lot of listening to do. I do that with my co-host Sammy Hadjisad.
I miss Sammy. I should nag you guys about being on again soon.
Yeah.
Links in the show notes for all the stuff that Ben's talked about there. Just as a real quick reminder to everybody, I have a lot of car friends, so a lot of stuff they're going to talk or pimp are going to be car kind of related. That's okay. But yeah, you should option your Dead Air to Paramount so they can make a Star Trek.
One day we'll have a conversation about what options are like in the comic book world and what happened when we did that.
Anyways, Mike, when you are not talking about Star Trek, what are you doing?
I mean, I'm cooking dinner, but
Nice.
it's
probably burned, Mike.
I just thought about how it's like it's probably my number one hobby, but it's in between like, well, I just do this versus it's a thing I really like. No, you can find me at roadandtrack.com, and you can also find me in the pages of Road and Track. We publish a magazine 6 times a year, and if you like cars and you like magazines, we put a lot of effort into trying to make it elevate it, because we recognize you're paying money for a thing to hold in your hands, and we have an amazing art department that does a lot of that makes the editing and word parts look better. But that's where you can find me mostly.
I love that you're still doing print. I know it's difficult to do. I was just on a program last year, actually with Zach. We were having dinner. It was just like me, Zach, one other person, and Angus McKenzie. And Angus was talking to us about print. We had all kind of got like these bright-eyed looks on our faces when we were talking about being in print. And he asked us all, he's like, what's the big deal? Why do you get so excited about print? Your audiences, because he knew where we were all writing. He's like, your audiences are bigger digitally. And I'm like, dog, it's not the same.
It's a totally different audience.
It's not like, and it is a different audience. And it's so great to be able to take something and like, I don't know, hand it to my mom and be like, hey, this is what I do. Cause
and yeah, it's also weird because I've been on both sides of it. Like there's things that we do in the magazine that like take long or like seem inefficient, but are an important part of the process. And then there's things we can't, like there's things that are better told on either medium, but it is fascinating though. Cause yeah, there's like a lot of stuff. It's like, we wish we could do that, but we can't do it the way that we need to do it in the book. So It doesn't make it into the book.
But I like that you have both options, and that Hearst is still supporting both options, because I feel like I think you're right. There's some stuff that really kind of only maybe works in print.
I also want to just talking about like audience. So some of the stuff I do in Canada is syndicated through a newspaper chain, and it goes like across the country, and it goes into papers I've never heard of in towns that I'm not familiar with. And the number of people who reach out to me to talk about the stories that I've written, who read something that I wrote in a newspaper that's serving a town of like 25,000 to 50,000 people, is probably higher than the digital engagement that I get on platforms that are much, much, much larger. And I find that fascinating. And just the idea that like you're reaching people who are more comfortable in some ways with contacting the writer and being like, hey, I had this experience with this car, or I don't agree with you, or I want to find out more. It's interesting to me that it is a different type of reader, and you're not going to find that necessarily in all online forums.
So if you're looking for a magazine to subscribe to, Road and Track is it. That's my plug for that. Thank you both for, I guess I should say my own things. You can find me in the show notes, whatever. But if you enjoyed this episode, which I hope you did, I'd be sad if you didn't. Give us a review. I think that's probably the best way that you can help us right now. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're kind of a little bit everywhere. That helps juice the algorithm. It also helps, it tremendously helps just to share it with friends, people that you know, people you like. If you want to support it maybe a little bit more, I will take your money We've got a Patreon set up that you can get early access to episodes, and we do some chit-chatting before episodes that only certain member levels get of that. So no, definitely don't feel like you're obligated to do that. I know money right now is really an issue because war. But yeah, if you think about it, but the best thing you can do, like I said, is let other people know. Thank you both for joining me. I hope both of you will come back at some point.
I had a lot of fun.
To be on. Yeah.
And until next time, I still don't have a closing stinger.
Play the theme song in reverse.
You need your own warp. You need your own go to warp phrase.
Yeah, you need an engage. What's your engage?
I was thinking that. I'm kind of a sucker for the classic. Like, I feel like engage is the way to go. So yeah, make it. But we're talking about Picard, so we got to make it so.